I'm going to show you how to design a letterhead using Adobe Illustrator for personal or professional print. Before we go about designing the letterheads, we need to first set up the document. And we do this by going to File and New. And from the New Document pop-up, we can enter a name for our project. I'm just going to type in letterhead. And you'll see we can stipulate an array of sizes. Now obviously the most common format, or size rather, for letterhead is A4. So we have A4 selected here. If you don't, simply click the drop down and select it. The next important thing is the colour mode. You'll notice we have CMYK selected by default. Or again, if you haven't, click the drop down and do select it. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow and black, or key. Now this is the 4 inks that are in a professional printer's printer, and also it's the same inks that are in your home or office printer. So this is the colour mode to use. So those are the two important settings, A4 and CMYK. Once those are set, simply click OK. And you'll see that Illustrator prepares the document, so we're now ready to begin building our letterheads. Before we plan and design our letterhead, we need to acquire the relevant information from the client that they wish to present upon it. These typical pieces of information we acquire include primary telephone number, a personal cell phone number, this is typical of a self-employed person, an email address, website URL, business postal address, and any other additional information. It's important that we acquire everything that the client wants on the letterhead, since the content will dictate the layout. So be sure that there's no last minute additions, since you might find yourself having to reposition the elements. So double check with the client to ensure that all information has been stipulated. So the next thing I need to do is to place the logo design. So I've opened this up, I've went to File and Open. I've located this logo design on my computer system. And here we have it. This is a vector version of the logo. As you'll see when I click upon it, you can see all the blue lines which are paths. This denotes the fact that this is a vector logo. Now it's all important that the logo is vector because it offers the greatest amount of clarity. And also, if for whatever reason you went to use elements of your letterhead to expand it in size, if it's vector, it never loses its quality. So with that done, if we click and highlight all and go to Object and Group, mine's grayed out because everything's grouped, but you should do this anyways just to ensure that everything in your logo is grouped so it's one manageable object. With that done, we can go to Edit, Copy, and we go back to our letterhead document and we can go to Edit and Paste. So as you can see, we now have our logo in the letterhead document. Now we can do anything from here. We can place the logo up top left, which is a common placement for the logo in a letterhead. We can place it top right. We could place it in the middle. Some people might have it down below or down below here. For the sake of the example, I'm going to begin with the logo at top left. So that's how we place the logo design into the letterhead document. Next, I'm going to review the logo design to see what elements of it I could possibly use to replicate to provide decoration in the letterhead. To show you this, I'm going to make a copy of this logo using Alt and Shift. I'm going to go to Object and Ungroup, and I'm going to extract this symbol. The symbol is of two abstract houses. Now one such option we have is to make a watermark with this symbol. And I'll show you what a watermark is. If we highlight the symbol and we go to the Align panel, beneath Align to, clicking the arrow and ensuring that Align to Artboard is selected, if we go to Horizontal Align Center beneath Align Objects and click upon that, it will now be centered within the document. Holding Shift, we can bring this down slightly and it keeps it constrained to the vertical. Now, to give it its watermark quality, we use the transparency panel and the opacity. So selecting the symbol and going to this transparency panel, we can bring the opacity down to around 10%. And you'll see what effect this has. So you'll now see that we have a faded version of the logo symbol in the document. This helps to give more detail and depth, and it's quite a sought after effect for many companies who have letterheads. I'm going to try something else. So highlighting the symbol once again, bringing the opacity back up to 100%. We could have the symbol at the bottom right hand corner. We could also have it at the bottom left hand corner. Now the reason I'm going to have it at the bottom right hand corner is because I've chosen to have the logo at the top left. If I place the symbol now or any other element on the right hand side, particularly at the bottom, this creates balance in the document. And so I'm going to have this house symbol down at bottom right. Next, we can go on to add what I call accessory elements. Now this page looks quite bare at the moment and the brand could maybe shine through a little more. That's to say there could be more bulk to the design rather than just the logo and the symbol at the bottom right hand corner. So to achieve this, I'm going to use a coloured bar. Now with the rectangle tool, I'm going to go ahead and try a bar up top. And I'm going to match the colour of this bar using the eyedropper tool to the blue in the symbol. Now as you can see, that doesn't work, so I'm going to take this bar, I'm going to rotate it, holding Shift, I'll rotate that round, I'm going to place it at the left hand side and I'm going to increase its size very slightly. Now I feel that works very nicely. Now before I finalise that, I'd just like to try something else. I'm going to go ahead and delete that for now. With the rectangle tool again, I'm going to draw a bar down here. Now this is going to act as an abstract kind of land because we have the house here. I'm going to select the house, I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front to bring the house symbol to the front. I'm going to reduce this slightly so it doesn't pop through the negative space. And as you can see, that's a concept I have there, using this as the ground to this house. Now, I was keen on using the bar on the left hand side as I originally had, but this concept's won me over, so I'm going to keep this bar down the bottom. So with that done and that decided upon, I'm now going to introduce the text to the letterhead design, and we'll see if we need to rearrange any elements when we do that. Chances are this will be a perfect layout graphic wise and the text will simply just slot in. Next we're going to add text to the logo design. The text includes telephone number, email address, website and the postal address, and together with any other additional information that the client might stipulate, like company registration numbers as one example. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use the text tool, or type tool rather, and I'm going to click in at the top right hand corner. I'm going to type T for telephone with a semicolon and I'm going to click tab. Now this is an important part which I'm going to show you because it gives a space between the T or whatever it's signifying, the telephone, the email or the website, and the actual credential. Okay, so I'm just going to put in a placeholder telephone number there. I'm going to press return twice. Next, I'm going to type in E for email. I'm going to press tab. I'm going to type in a placeholder email address. Next, I'm going to type in a W for website. I'm going to press tab. So there we have it. I'm going to place this at the top right hand corner. I'm going to do the same again with the type tool. I'm going to click down here. Okay, that's an address that I've just made up from the top of my head, and that's going to sit neatly down here. So that's where I'm going to have my text for this letterhead. It's the bare basics. We have the postal address down bottom, and we have telephone, email and website up top. Again, it's important to note here the balance I've applied. As we done earlier, we applied the symbol of the logo at the bottom right hand corner. So there was perfect balance against the logo which was at the top left. Likewise here, the bottom text, the postal address, is balanced perfectly with the credentials at the top right hand corner. So this letterhead has perfect balance between the text and the graphics. So now we're going to do three things to the text. We're going to select a suitable formal legible font. We're going to apply bold in places where bold will be appropriate, and we're going to apply appropriate colour coordination. So to go ahead and do this, I'm going to select, holding shift, both pieces of text. I'm going to go to the character panel and I'm going to type in ASAP. This is a personal favourite that I use. I don't use it all the time because each design is different, but this is a personal favourite that I've used a few times. And I'm going to select ASAP regular. Now you'll see that this colour is black in comparison to the logo. Now the best thing we can do here, instead of having 100% black, which is quite overbearing, we can use the eyedropper tool to match it with one of the colours of the logo. In this case, it's a perfect grey. So I can use this for the text. Now, if the logo is maybe too outlandish and doesn't have any kind of colour which you can copy that's suitable for the text, you can always rely upon a grey colour for the text. And as you can see, the grey I've used here is 87% black, as you can see in the colour panel. This is denoted by the case slider at the bottom. With this done, the next thing I'm going to do is bolden the T, the E and the W, which stands for telephone, email and website. So highlighting the T, I'm going to go to the character panel. I'm going to click the drop down and I'm going to select bold. While this is highlighted, I'm also going to use the eyedropper tool and I'm going to match it with this blue down here. And this is the result. So now the text is taking on the brand of the company. It's utilising its colours. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same with the E. In the character panel, I'm going to select bold from the drop down. And with the eyedropper tool, I'm going to match that blue again to the bar at the bottom. We do the same again with the W. Character panel, drop down bold. Eyedropper tool matched to the bottom. So with those changes made, we now have the brand established with colour coordination. We have balance in the text, we have balance in the graphics, and overall we have the finished solution for the letterhead for Montes Property Group. Now, whilst this stands as the completed document, there are measures I like to take before I send this to the client or the printers, whoever I'm working for. Now, you'll see the symbol at the bottom right hand corner is overhanging. Now, this doesn't make any difference because when it comes to print, it simply cuts this part off which overhangs. However, from an aesthetic viewpoint, whilst using the software, I do like everything to be contained and I like everything to be neat. So, to tidy this up, what I do is I use a mask with the rectangle tool. So, selecting the rectangle tool, I drag out a rectangle over the portion of the symbol that I wish to show in the document. Just getting rid of that stroke. Now, holding shift and selecting both shapes, the symbol and the rectangle, with the selection tool, I can now go to Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. Now you'll see that this is masked in the area of the rectangle that I've just made. So again, this isn't mandatory, but it is something that I like to do just to have clean, manageable work. So it tells a person on the other end that this is what's going to print, rather than having distractions of things overhanging. So there we have it, a nice clean document ready for professional print. When we come to pass files on to anyone else, it's common courtesy to actually name the elements. As you'll see in the layers panel, if I expand this layer, you'll see that all of these have various names. Instead, I'm going to name these coherently. So if I first select the logo, you'll see it's called Group. If I double click this element, I can now type in logo. So this element is now identifiable as the logo. Clicking the text at top right, I can type in telephone. The element bottom right, footer symbol. I can select the text at the bottom, double click on that element in the layers panel, delete the information that's there, and I can type in bottom address or footer address, that'd be more appropriate. And finally, the shape at the bottom, I'll call footer bar. And that's that done. So now you'll see that each element in the layers panel is named accordingly. So if another person wanted to locate a certain element on the artboard, in the layers panel, it's named appropriately so they can do exactly that. So here we have the document ready to be saved into formats we can give to professional printers. Now there's two main formats which I use, it's PDF and AI. Now there's two differences between PDF and AI. Firstly, the PDF can be opened by any PDF reader. So it's a vector file which can be viewed easily. The AI file, on the other hand, needs Adobe Illustrator or compatible software for it to be viewed. The most prominent difference is the PDF file can embed fonts, whereas the AI file doesn't embed fonts. So if you were to send an AI file as it is with editable text, you'd also have to send the font file to the printers. Otherwise, it would ask for it when they open this document in Adobe Illustrator. They then have to install that font themselves. So to combat this, we trace down the text into shapes. But before we do this, we make that PDF. To do this, we go to File, Save As. We give it a file name. At the bottom, in Format, we select Adobe PDF and we click Save. I'm just replacing that because I already have a copy. And Preserve Illustrator editing capabilities should be checked because we want this file to be the editable version. Click save PDF, and we now have that copy which we can view through a reader, and we also, most importantly, have that copy which we can edit because we have the editable text here. So finally, we need to create the AI file. So we want to select the text here, or we could just drag across the whole document to ensure everything's included, every bit of text. And we go to type, create outlines. Now that editable text is now traced down to shapes. You'll see here, see the outlines of all the shapes. Now this document can be saved by going to File, Save As, give it a file name once again, and in the format select Adobe Illustrator AI, click Save, and ensuring that Create PDF Compatible File is selected, clicking OK. Now this document is ready to send to the printers, and the printers will not require the font file. Alternatively, you could send this document without making the fonts into outlines and just provide the font. But in most cases, the printers will ask that you do create outlines out the font for their convenience. So that's something to note. So that's how you prepare those two main formats, PDF and AI. Okay, now I'm going to discuss what's called bleed. Now, bleed can be a bugbear for designers. Sometimes you need to use it, sometimes you don't. Professional printing companies can sometimes compensate for lack of bleed and just set things up for themselves, whilst other printing companies demand that bleed is applied to the document. I'm going to go ahead and show you what bleed is. Now, this should maybe be at the very start before you commence work, but I've put it at the end of the course as not to detract from the actual design layout itself. But I'll show you now how you might design if you need to apply bleed from the outset, or indeed if you need to apply bleed after you've finished some work. Now, take this letterhead for instance. The only thing that we need to adjust is the footer image down the bottom. So I'm going to show you what we can do here to set the bleed. We go to New, and then we go to Document Setup. Now you'll see in the options we have something called bleed here, and if we click the up arrow for top, all the rest change also. The safest bet for bleed is 3mm, assuming you can't find that out from the professional printer. So go ahead and set up 3mm, and we click OK. Now you'll see a red border has appeared around the document. This is what's known as the bleed line. Now the rule here is we need to have anything that we want to extend to the very edge of the page extend to the bleed line. So in this document it's only the footer down here. So we take the footer and we move it towards the bleed line. And we can increase the size if we want, just to compensate for having done that. And as you can see, the blue now extends to the bleed line. Now what's going to happen here is when this is professionally printed, this whole sheet is going to be printed to the bleed line on the actual printer, and then it's going to be cut at the page line. And this process is carried out so that the ink reaches the very edge of the page when it's cut, because it goes beyond and then it's cut down to size. So if we go on to the next letterhead we've done, and we do the same, we go to File, Document Setup, and we apply that same bleed again of 3mm, and we click OK. The only thing we need to do here is bring down the blue, and that's that document, bleed prepared. Going to the next one we've done, the alternative layout, and we go to File, Document Setup, and we assign that bleed again, 3mm. The only thing that might need changing is this here. Okay, so we might wish to just move this very slightly to the left hand side, like so. So that's how we set up bleed. If you want anything to extend to the very edge of the page, make sure you run it all the way to the bleed line. Setting the bleed is something you can do from the very outset when you set up your document, setting the A4 size and the colour mode, and it's something I do suggest that you do if you know for sure that you're going to be developing the stationery for professional print. If you know you're going to be developing something for home or office use, the bleed isn't necessary. Let's jump right in here and explore a different possible layout. So I'm going to try the logo in the centre, and I'm going to ensure this is perfectly centered by going to the Align panel, ensuring that Align to Artboard is selected underneath Align to. Underneath Align Objects, I'm going to click Horizontal Align Center. Now this places the logo in the perfect center. Now we have credentials here. Now if those were to be placed on the left hand side of the logo, we lose the balance. Likewise, if they were kept on the right hand side, we also don't have balance. And so, to achieve the balance, we're going to have this on a centered line underneath the logo. So to do this, I'm going to click back on this E here and press backspace on the keyboard twice. Then I'm going to press Tab twice. I'm going to click before the W, pressing backspace twice, then clicking Tab twice. And with this selected, I'm going to go to Align. Beneath Align Objects once again, I'm going to click Horizontal Align Center. And so we now have this centralized. I'm going to click this, I'm going to raise it slightly with the up arrow on the keyboard. Now I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to consider what we can do with the footer portion of the document. The footer is the piece at the bottom. We currently have the house, the two houses and a symbol with the bar at the bottom. I also want to put this in the center. This is the postal address at the bottom. So I'm going to have that centralized with everything for balance. I'm going to remove the clipping mask from this by going to Object, Clipping Mask, Release, and delete the rectangle. And I want to see if I can do anything with this symbol. What we could do is a miniature version of it for the footer, like so. And centralizing that, I think that looks good. I'm going to raise this up slightly and make this a little bit thicker also. And I've decided I'm actually going to put the postal address on this bar. And so that it stands out, I'm going to colour it white by selecting white in the swatches panel. I'm now going to place this symbol further down. And I'm pleased with that. So that marks completion of an alternative layout for Montes Property Group Letterhead. So let's go right ahead and try another layout. I'm going to choose to put let's put the Montes at the right hand side. And I'm going to layer these credentials at the left hand side by clicking in, putting in a couple of returns there. Positioning this. And we're just ensuring that there's breathing space between the logo and the edges of the document, and likewise we do the same with the credentials. Now, I'd like to do something different with this stray symbol, and I think I'm going to try something along the lines of a watermark. For balance, however, I want to do something over the left hand side because the logo is on the right hand side. I'm going to delete this bar down here. I'm going to change the colour of the text at the bottom by matching it with the eyedropper tool to the grey of the logo. And just to give a bit of effect, I'm going to cut this off slightly. I'm going to now select the rectangle tool, and I'm going to go over the part where I want the symbol to be visible. We could keep it as it is, but it's going to be more clean if we use a mask. So dragging across both of these shapes, I'm now going to go to Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. With that done, I'm going to go to the Transparency panel, and I'm going to turn the opacity down to around 10%. And I'm going to judge how this looks. And I'm quite pleased with that, so that represents the final letterhead, the alternative design for Montes Property Group. So that wraps things up. I hope you've gained enough knowledge from this video to design a letterhead for yourself or for your client.